Hello and welcome back. My name is Rohit, and in this video, we're basically going to continue our discussion of Python data types. In the previous video, we saw that how we could define integer, float, and string data types. And in this video, what we'll basically cover is we'll see some integer and float data type operations, and we'll also have a look at type conversion, that is converting one type to another, and we'll also have a look at string operations, specifically string slicing, extraction, and some string functions as well. So let me first start with integer and float operations. So pretty much the integer and float operations is not a rocket science. So if you define an integer, for example, a equals to 10, and if you define a float, say equals to b equals to 10.10, you could pretty much do addition, and you can do subtraction, you can do multiplication, division, whatnot, right? So all those are operations that you do on string on integers and float, right? So what I can do, for example, I can do b minus a, right, and I get the output, right? I can do b into a, right? I can do b divided by a, right? So all those are operations that I can perform, the mathematical operations. So there is no nothing so rocket science about that. Now what I'm going to basically tell you now next is type conversion, right? So what is basically type conversion? Type conversion is when I can convert one data type to another data type. For example, b in our case is float, and we can verify that using the type function that I told you previously, right? And what we can do is we can have another variable c equals to, and we can convert this float data into an integer, right? And we can do one thing, we can print c, so we get 10. So the dot 10 is missing, right? So what it basically does is it gives us the integer value of a value, right, of a float value. It gives us a integer value, right? And I can similarly convert, I can take d, we can see, let's verify. A is an integer, right? I can use another variable d equals to float, and I can pass a. What I'll do is it'll create d will be a float 10.0, right? We a equals to 10, so a was 10, an integer, and what we did was basically convert that integer into a float value, right? So basically we've seen we saw operations, what we can perform with integers and float, and we also saw converting type, one type into another type. So it's common sense that you cannot convert a string into an integer or float, right? That's pretty much common sense. For example, let me just demonstrate that. So I have a string x. It's not a number, first of all, so I won't be able to do something like int x, right? This will throw an exception, right? So it says invalid literal for int with base 10. So that means this cannot be converted into an integer value, and that's pretty much common sense, right? So you cannot convert this to float either, right? But what you can do is, if you have, for example, a equals to 100, this is an int, we can verify that. And if I want to convert this 100 into a string, we can do that, right? I can select another variable, or let me do one thing. Let me just call the string function and pass a, and what it does, it returns 100, but you can see it's in quotes, right? So I told you, as I told you in my video 1, that anything that's in quotes, right, is a string. So it basically converts this number into string, right? And now what we can do here is, if, for example, I take a string, can we convert this into a number? Yes, we can. Remember, this ultimately, if you can see, common sense, this is a number, right? Hello here was not a number, so we were not able to convert x into an integer because the value of x was hello and it's not a number. That's as simple as that. S equals to 100. Now s is a string, we can verify that, right? I will be able to convert this into int. I will be able to convert this into a float. I can do that, right? So this is type conversion. We can convert one data type into another data type. So you just have to remember a couple of functions, int, right? And we have, the string function, we have the float function. These you just have to remember those functions, right? So now we've seen what operations can be performed on integers, right? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and we've also seen type conversion, converting one type into another type, right? Now what we're going to see is we'll basically see some functions, right? Some integer functions, float functions, string functions. So what exactly is a function? A function is a block of code that performs some action, right? You can simply understand it as a block of code that can perform some action, and we can call that block of code, right? So what I mean by that is, for example, I told you we just converted s in a float. Now float is a function. What it does, it performs an action. What it does, it takes the value and converts it into float, right? So this is a function. It's the simple definition of a function, right? Now what we're going to do is we'll look at certain functions. Now how do you access those functions is the first question. So if, for example, I can do, let me go ahead and restart the shell. If I do something like a equals to 10, now you know that this is an integer. I can do I put a dot, and I can hit a tab, right? This works in idle, right? Remember, so if you're trying to learn or trying to, figure out what are different integer functions, what are different string functions, float functions, idle is a good place that'll tell you that. Just, initialize a data type and, use a dot like I've done a dot and hit tab, right? It'll open up all those functions, all those functions are mathematical functions, right? So we can basically call those functions, right? So there's one function that in particular I would like to tell you. I mean, there's a float function. So if, for example, I initialize a float variable, I, for example, say b equals to 10.10. Oh, I'll tell you what exactly happened in a later video, right? So b equals to 10.10, and if I do b dot, now there's a function, for example, is integer, right? If I execute this function, what will happen? Just see. It gave me a false. So what it really means is that 10.10 is basically not an absolute integer, right? To demonstrate this further, if I do something like c equals to 100.00, right? So we can verify the type of, type of c. We see it's a float, right? It's a float. Now, if I invoke the same function, is integer, it's going to give me what? It's going to give me true. Yes, this is an integer. Basically, it is represented as a float, but ultimately it's an integer, right? It's 100. There's no value of .00. So, every data type that you define you can access the functions of that particular data type, right? So what we are interested in, which we should be interested in, is the string functions or the string functions, right? Because they'll be very much used. Those the integer and the float functions. I mean, if you're into mathematical stuff, you can use them. You can also use specialized modules. We'll talk about those later, which will give you a lot of different functions as well. So, but now, let's turn our focus to string functions. All right, let me initialize a string a. equals to, how do we initialize? I won't really specify a value right now. I'll just initialize the string, right? We can check type of A is string, and if I want to print A, there's nothing in it, right? I have just initialized an empty string. Now I can basically have some value go into it, and let me do one thing. Let me just use a simple value A, B, C, D, E, right? Let me just use this value. Now this is a string, right? I can print A as well, A, B, C, D, E. I want to tell you about one function that would be pretty, that might be useful in your programming. Now, len function. The len function basically returns the length of a string. Now, what is the length of a string? A length of string is, how many characters are there in a string, including spaces and any special characters, right? So in this case, we can, figure it out. It should be 5, right? A, B, C, D, E. It should be 5, and that it is, right? So the length of the string is 5. So this len function can come handy when you are dealing with outputs, for example, from devices or strings that you don't know how long they are, right? So it can be useful for that function, for that as well. Now, how strings are represented in Python is one interesting topic that I want to tell you. So I selected this very easy string ABCDE. Now I just want to tell you how this is actually represented inside, in Python. So we have A, B, C, D, and E, right? In Python, basically what happens is A is at index 0, B will be at index 1, C will have an index 2, and so on. D will have 3 and E will have 4. So basically 0 to 4 is 5, right? So because we begin our counting from 0, right? So there are 5 characters, right? And these are indexed with numbers, right? Beginning is 0. Similarly, it can go in reverse as well. So E is -1, right? And D would be -2, right? And it'll just go on that way. So E is -1, D is -2, C is -3, B is -4, and A is -5. Now I think you understand the indexing, but how is it useful? How is it really useful? So what we can do, we can basically refer to that index value to extract string, to extract some portion of the string, or to extract one character. So what I really mean is, so we can basically do that. Now let me print A once again. What was A? A, B, C, D, E. Now if I have to reference one index of this particular string, what do? I basically specify the variable, which is A, and then I open a square bracket and I put in my index value here. So for example, let me put 0. Let me see what's at 0th position. What do you think is at the 0th position? It's A, right? Now if I hit enter, what should I get? I should get A, and that we get, right? So similarly, we can do one thing. We can basically have position 1 is B, and position 4 is E, right? The last one, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And basically, we can also specify a range of index values. For example, if I have to extract A, B, and C, what I'll do, I'll refer to that particular data type. I'll open the square bracket. I'll put in 0 because A starts from 0, and I go up to what? If I say, for example, say 2, you might think 2, 0, 1, 2, right? So it should start from A and end at C, but that's not the case. See what happens if I press enter. I get A and B. So basically 2 is not included, right? It goes up to 2 but doesn't really include 2. So what I have to do, I basically have to extract from 0 to 3. Now 0 is A, B is 1, C is 2, and D is 3. Remember, the index 3 won't be included. The string will be sliced up to that index but not including that index, right? So we will get A, B, and C. This is how we can extract a portion of a string in Python, right? We can refer to the index, we can specify an index range, right? What if there is one more way we can extract A, B, C. It's a a simpler way. Is what we can do is, I basically do not provide anything. I don't provide the start position of a string. So what it'll do, the starting would be by default from 0. We get the same result, right? So 0 is not really mandatory. Similarly, I can do something like go from 3 to the end of the string, and what should I get, right? It will include it will start with 3, so 3 is what, D, but it won't and it will include E as well. Let us try to do that, right? So it'll include E as well. So from 3 to the end, right? So I hope you have understood how do we extract strings, how do we reference those index values, and now let's shift our focus to some string functions as well, right? Or let's do one thing. I mean, I told you that the strings are organized from 0 to 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on, and then it in reverse direction they're reference from -1. So what I really mean is, for example, I say A and -1, what should it give me? It'll basically give me the last character, the E character, because E is -1, D is -2, C is -3, B is -4, and A is -5. We can see that, right? A is -1, right? A -1 is E. A -2 should be D, and that is right? So it can be done both ways. You just have to remember, from left to right, it starts from 0 to the length of the string, and from right to left, it basically starts from -1. Just have to understand that. And basically you pretty much, I really don't use minus, negative values, negative index values to extract strings. If there could be any special case that you might want, but you can remember this way. You must remember this method which begins with 0. This way you should remember it, right? And now let's shift our focus on certain string functions. And first of all, let's do some string operations as well, right? So let me initialize a couple of strings. A equals to hello, and B is world, right? So what I can do A plus B. This is string concatenation. What it'll do, it'll basically combine hello and world, right? Now you see there is no space in between them. It just combined those two words together, right? What if we really want a space in between hello and world? What can be done? So there are a couple of things that can be done without, you could do something like that. You could reinitialize. A is equal to hello. B is, you could give a space here. A space is a valid string character, right? You could give a space here. And then if you do A plus B, you would see that space, right? This is one way you could do it, right? But I'll just tell you one more way you can do it. You can basically do A plus B, and what you get is hello world. Or you could do A plus, and then you could add a space to it, and then plus B. You can do it this way as well. So what you've basically done, you added A, that is hello, and then you added a space, and then added B, so hello world, right? So now this is string concatenation. You can add two strings together using this method. We will also see a couple of string functions. So now A is hello and B is world. So what we can do, you can type that variable name and put a dot, hit the tab value, and you can see we have certain functions, right? The first one is capitalize. What will capitalize do? As the name suggests, what will it do? It'll basically capitalize the first alphabet of a string. Now hello was already capitalized. Let's reinitialize this variable with a small h, right? And if I use this function, now we can see that h is capitalized, right? Or I could do something like a dot upper. What will a dot upper do? It will, convert all those lowercase alphabets to uppercase, right? So basically, there are a lot of string functions. You just have to type variable name, use a dot, and put a tab around it, and you know you could check if the string really ends with certain character. You know, once you open this brace, you also notice that we have some hint that is provided to us, right? So if we want to check, if it ends with an o, and in this case, yes, it ends with an o, so we should get true, right? If we were to specify any other value, say for example y, then it doesn't end with y. Hello ends with o, so it's false. So you see that you have a lot of different functions, and you know you can also use an index function. For example, let me reinitialize the string hello, and if I want to find the index of, for example, say e, I have to put this in quotes, right? Remember, string goes in quotes, and what I can get is I'll get the index of this particular variable. So h is 0 and e is 1, and we get the index of e. So we can also type o, and we can get the index of o. So what basically you can go through all those functions. Most of the functions are very simple when you'll for example, upper, lower, capitalized, and all those functions are very simple. And we'll also go through all those functions once we start writing our programs. And we'll use any specialized function if we need one. So this is all about integers, float, and strings. We have seen integer operations, type conversion, some string operations, just one string operation, concatenation, right? And we also saw some string functions as well. So what you can do is you can basically go ahead and explore and try all those different functions. You could search online or refer any book for all detailed information on those. But as of now, I suppose this information that I've given you is more than sufficient, as in when we'll start writing our programs, we'll go through a lot of functions as well. So I hope this has been informative. If it has been, please press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much for